G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright people, review of the week time. And what a week it's been. It's been an eventful week. That's kind of why I'm kind of like, where do I even start? Do I start with the fights last night? Do I start with the AJ Fury situation? Billy Joe Saunders, we'll start with him. He recently put up a pic on Instagram, on his Instagram story, of him. Basically, like, it wasn't like a picture that you can upload to that's always going to be there. It's kind of like those little snippets of your day. And it was him with his shirt off, posing in the mirror saying pending, or words to that effect. Basically, he was hinting at a comeback. So Billy Joe Saunders, as we know, he's really been quite... He's not been very vocal at all since the Canelo fight. That was May. It's been a while. It's been a quick few months, but that was in May. We're now going into February 2022. Won't be long until we're a year later. It's only a couple of months shy of a year. So we've heard very little from Billy Joe. Is he still with Matunu? I don't know. Is he a free agent? I don't know. Who is he going to fight? Is he going to fight again? I don't know. He's kind of hinting by that. Now, this could be just, smoke and mirrors for Billy Joe Saunders. But he is hinting that he is potentially looking to come back to the ring. Now, again, if he does, would it be a middleweight, super middleweight? I'm going to say it right here. A fight that I would love to see Billy Joe Saunders in is a fight that we didn't get. All right? I'd love to see the Demetrius Andrade fight. I would. I guess, like, it probably wouldn't be the best fight in terms of just from a boxing fan's perspective. Be a boxing purist kind of fight. When you normally get two southpaws, especially two slick southpaws, doesn't tend to be a very fun fight in terms of, it's not going to be a war. But for some reason, that fight always appealed to me. I always felt that Demetrius Andrade would win that fight. And it's a fight I'd still like to see. Billy Joe Saunders, in my opinion, his years have been pretty much wasted. He really... He won his first world title when he was, 26? Yeah, he would have been about 26. He's now in his 30s. He's, 31, 32 now. And he's done very little since then. There's only really kind of like two highlights you can take from Billy Joe's entire world title reigns. I say reigns because he's had two. Was the David Lemieux fight, which people still talk about. And it was a very, very good performance from Billy Joe Saunders. I won't take that away from him. But again, that was that stylistically, you couldn't have got a better style for Billy Joe Saunders to go in there with it, other than Lemieux. And the Canelo fight, unless I'm missing. No, I'm not. That's really it. Like, they're the only really two fights that he's really, and he lost the Canelo fight, lest we forget. If he comes back now, I reckon that I reckon that the fire mightn't be there. He's been well paid, very well paid for the Canelo fight. Discipline and not staying in shape, because he done a video. Was it a video of him driving or something like that? A couple of months after the Canelo fight, might have not been long after. And you could see around the kind of chin area they were starting to kind of build up a little bit. So I wonder what weight he's going to be at and what kind of shape he'd be in and how motivated he'd be, and also who'd be training him, because it was, Mark Tibbs and him. That relationship, I think, is gone now after what happened in the Canelo fight. And I reckon he's more than likely going to go back to Ben Davison, I can imagine. So we'll watch the space of Billy Joe Saunders. At the end of the day, I don't think he's not going to be cleaning out the division at 160 or 168. Potentially, we might be looking at the Eubank Jr. rematch. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe he'll go and sign with Boxer. Maybe he'll go and do that, and maybe have a comeback fight, and then they'll do Eubank versus Billy Joe at the end of the year. That fight is still big. Billy Joe Saunders versus Eubank Jr. Provided, of course, Eubank Jr. wins and Billy Joe was a comeback fight and wins in good fashion. It'd still do good numbers, I think. Wouldn't be like a stadium filler or anything like that, but O2, Sky Box Office, they'll probably do alright. Probably would anyway. The build-up, they can sell it as, the rematch, this, that, and the other. Both guys are very vocal. So, they could probably do that. So, we'll watch the space with Billy Joe Saunders. I was going to read the news, but we'll talk about the fights that happened last night. We'll start with Kansai Sell. Now, in my opinion, Kansai Sell should be going into a unification fight with Shakur Stevenson and not Oscar Valdez. right? But nevertheless, he had a fight there against Xavier Martinez last night, and he won it quite well. I picked him in my prediction league to win the fight. I thought it might be a bit closer than it was, but it was a very good performance from Kansai, and he's going to be a problem at 130 pounds. Make no mistake about it. He was the way he was treated in that fight against Valdez, even before the fight happened. To me, it really does show how farcical some of these sanctioning bodies are, with the WBC specifically. I mean, I had to laugh, right? I had to laugh when they got rid of Conor Benn from the... Now, I think that's all sorted now anyway, but they got rid of Conor Benn from the rankings because he didn't, I think Eddie Hearn said he didn't fill out the paperwork right or something like that for the clean boxing program. And yet, you have a champion, your champion at 130 pounds, fails to have had a drugs test, for a PED, and it was a PED, it was a performance enhancer, it was helping him cut the weight, and you do nothing. But yet you'll remove Conor Benn, Chris Billum-Smith, and I think they removed other people as well for not signing up. But there you have one of your fighters who we know has failed because it's there, and yet you'll still let him fight. So I don't know. It's a WBC. It's just an absolute joke. But Kansai got the win last night. Obviously, the main card, the Don King card, the Don King extravaganza. It's quite remarkable, really. Do you know what it is, right? We get a list in the prediction league. I do. We get a list of some of the fights that are going on, and they sent me like a couple of them from the Don King card. Now I thought they'd only send me two: the Bryan fight and the Makabu Matunu fight. But they sent a few of the fights, and I was like, who? Like and I know boxing, right? And I even know kind of some fighters who are journeymen or who are up and coming. And I'm looking at these names, I'm like, I've no idea who any of these fighters are, because like there's even names that like I know kind of in the journeyman scene or in kind of the small hall scene, stuff like that, like in the UK and in the States. And I was looking at this and I was like, I have no idea who these guys are. Like literally, I have no idea who they are. And they weren't, I don't think any of them were undefeated, on the lower card. They all had like a loss or two. And I was just looking at it and I was like, I've literally no idea who these people are. And, it was crazy. But the two fights we want to talk about, we'll start with Trevor Bryan. That fight seemed a gross mismatch to me. I mean, the guy he was fighting, if you go and look at his box rec, piss poor. He was only added to the WBA rankings like in the last month. And I know Bryan is not amazing. He never, even before he had his stretches of inactivity, he never really shown to me that, he would be anything special. This wasn't the next best American. Like Jared Anderson, looks a lot better, up and coming than Trevor Bryan did. But in this fight, he won via split decision. Now, I haven't seen the full fight, but I did see highlights of it. He does not look good. He's a good bit overweight. When he was fighting guys like, naming the guy, BJ Flores, he was in the 230s, seemed a bit more mobile in that fight, and that was nearly 4 years ago. He fought Bermain Stavern last year, and I guess we should have looked in hindsight. Stavern, in the Wilder rematch, which is, 4 years ago? 5 years ago now, isn't it actually? No, 4 years ago, was shot to pieces. You could see it then and there. And they fought in 2021, and you're going 11 rounds with Bermain Stavern, really, at this stage? And Stavern was actually landing shots in that fight. So for me, looking at that, I was like, Jesus, this guy is... I thought he was... I didn't think he was amazing, but boy. So Daniel Dubois actually took to Twitter to say he'll see him next. I reckon Frank might try and get him out on an interim fight. You never know. He was on about Anthony Yarde and Daniel Dubois having a show sometime in March maybe. But maybe for that, they'll just look at getting Anthony Yarde straight in there with Joe Smith. But I wouldn't be surprised if Dubois has an interim fight in the meantime. Dubois will make short work of Trevor Bryan, mark my words on that. Yes, I think Dubois, he still needs to kind of, since the Joe Joyce fight, they still need to be careful. But I think someone like him, Bryan, Dubois make short work of him. Like, honestly, I think Dubois will light him up and probably get rid of him winning a couple of rounds. That would make Dubois, amazingly, regular WBA champion, because that was for the WBA regular title. That title really is kind of a little throwaway belt. It really is, because you have people like Manuel Char, Chris Lovejoy, who's the other guy, Trevor Bryan. They're the kind of guys who are fighting for that title. You know, the actual one that Alexander Usyk has, I'm sure some of the guys in those top 15 rankings are looking. That's the one they want, not the bleeding regular. The regular for a reason. That's literally kind of how it is. It's like regular for a reason. The super one is the one you really want. And obviously, main event was Ilunga Makabu versus Thabisa Matunu. Now, I spoke before about that first fight, and it was a very good fight. That Matunu was definitely winning until he gassed out and got stopped. You can watch it on YouTube with the South African commentary. It was a very good fight, very good fight. I expected this one to be similar, but I think Makabu would know what Makabu will probably be more aware. He's more experienced now, and he knows what Matunu is. Matunu is what he is. Matunu is a boxer. He's an out-and-out boxer. He's very slick. Doesn't take the best shot in the world, although he wasn't down in this fight. And isn't a devastating puncher. And he did hit Makabu plenty in this fight. There was times Makabu really was. Makabu was cognizant. He was more cognizant early on of what was coming back from Thabisa Matunu. I think he was aware from what happened in the first fight that Matunu early on, that was when in the first fight he was really having a strength. And I think Makabu was cognizant. Nevertheless, Thabisa Matunu was winning some of the early rounds. Makabu, I think it was in the 10th round. It was the 10th round. Where Matunu was just like landing. They weren't hard concussive shots. Like, there were a couple of right hooks that were landing bang on the chin, but they didn't have. You could tell Matunu wasn't cranking as much effort into these shots late on, and they weren't like. Makabu was just kind of taking them like, yeah, that your best shot. Come on, hit me again. And you know, Makabu was having his success in the fight as well. By the end of it, it was nip and tuck. It was a close fight. I had a 5-7 to Thabisa Matunu. I wasn't surprised that they gave it to Makabu for several different reasons. I mean, obviously, the Canelo fight is still a possibility, although I think Canelo more than likely to be facing Charlo next. But if they thought there was even a 50% chance, or maybe even less, if they thought there was a slight chance of having a Canelo fight, they want to make sure he wins and he keeps his title. Now, I'm not going to say robbery, because Makabu did certainly have a success in there, and I don't think Thabisa Matunu was active enough. Matunu seemed happy enough to, bit like Kid Galahad when he fought Josh Warrington. I know that was in Leeds, a Niger guy from, I think it was in Ohio. But it was like Kid Galahad was happy enough to just pick a couple of rounds and just try and nick the rounds, whereas the judges probably wanted to see someone actually really stamp their authority, which Thabisa Matunu didn't do. So Ilunga Makabu moves on. I'd be surprised if he fights Canelo next. I'll put it like that. I think that, judging by what I'm going to read here, where is it? Oh, I logged off the Wi-Fi. But I think, judging by what Canelo was saying here, that the two fights that are being talked about for him, I'll just get it up here, are either two fights with the Zone. Yeah, so it says here, Alvarez has reportedly been offered a one-fight deal with Al Haymon to face Jamal Charlo next. He's also been offered a two-fight deal, fight Dimitri Bivol next, then a Triple G trilogy by Eddie Hearn. So with the Hearn one, I'd imagine it's Dimitri Bivol at 175, drop back down to 168. The Triple G fight would probably make Canelo the most money, I would imagine. The Zone, when Canelo first signed with the Zone, you could tell that was the fight they wanted. They wanted the trilogy on the Zone. That was the fight they wanted. At the end of the day, if that happened, just saying that fight did happen, I'd just take it for what it is at this stage. It's not one guy. It's one guy in his prime, one guy past it. You could say Triple G wasn't in his prime in the first two fights, and yes, but it was still a better Triple G than we have now. He was closer to his prime in 2017, 2018 than he is now. We'll put it like that. In terms of the Charlo fight, you know, Charlo is a bigger name than Caleb Plant, and the Caleb Plant fight for Canelo did quite well on pay-per-view. Canelo was very complimentary, you know, it seemed, with Al Haymon. I'd say Eddie Hearn still probably cries with a Canelo shirt at night every time he hears that. But I would say, if you wanted me, if I was a betting man, judging by those offers, I think Canelo was enjoying being able to go between platforms and pick and choose the fights he wants. Because at the end of the day, Al Haymon is, and this is bizarre, like, you normally with Al Haymon, like, you do see him, you don't see fighters come and go from PBC, they're normally stuck in there. If it's a one fight deal, for Canelo, You go, you fight Charlo on pay-per-view. It would do better numbers than Caleb Plant did, because Charlo has pay-per-view, has headline pay-per-views before. And then you're free to go your separate ways. If you want to make the Bivol fight with her next, you can do that. If you want to make the Joe Smith Jr. fight then after, you can go to Top Rank and do that. So for me with Canelo, what he's doing there is very smart. And a fighter of Canelo, that's why I'm amazed AJ hasn't done it yet. Because AJ is a bigger commodity than Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, DAZN, or Sky. So he could do that as well. And Canelo Alvarez has been talking about how he's made more money doing it that way than he has, he ever did with Golden Boy and things. So for sure, Alvarez is doing good work. Like, I would say most likelihood is you'll get Charlo next. I would say actually probably I was going to say more likely Matunu then after, but what network would you have that on? Would you have it on DAZN? Would you let maybe he'd do that. Maybe if he wanted to fight Matunu at some point, he could just say, right, I'm fighting Matunu and let networks bid for it. Potentially he could do that, I don't know. But that's the situation with Canelo. Eddie Hearn has stated that Conor Benn will likely headline the O2 on April the 23rd. Maurice Hooker interested, basically we already knew that. I'm curious about that. Again, like every time I hear Maurice Hooker, I just think to myself, did Eddie Hearn watch my videos on Conor Benn? Because I was saying that for ages, that's a good opponent. Maurice Hooker, good name, a good scalp to have on your resume more so. Maurice Hooker, to be fair, because the former world champion, only loss came from a unification and one of the best fighters in the welterweight division, up and coming, Virgil Ortiz. So for me, it made sense. So we'll see. I'll watch the space. I definitely, like, the other option was Robert Guerrero. No. I talk about that. No, God, no. Jesus, no. I mean, if he can get through Maurice Hooker, put him in there with Mean Machine. Put him in there with Avanesian. Put him in there with one of them guys. I remember Ade was speaking on his interview with Conor Benn, and he was saying he's ready for Avanesian now. Look, I don't know, but I'm not as convinced with Conor Benn as Ade is. I think Ade is thinking Conor Benn is ready for guys like Avanesian and all that. I think Avanesian would take Conor Benn's head clean off his shoulders. I think that there's a reason why we're not seeing Conor Benn get put in there with punchers. And when he does, I wouldn't, like, depending on the level of the puncher, depending on the level of the opponent, I reckon we might see something happen. I reckon we might see that. It's another one as well, because with certain matches, like Conor Benn's been matched quite well. He has, and I've never said, some people have said, do you have an issue with the matchmaking? I said, no, I don't have an issue with the matchmaking per se. I get what they're doing, and they're putting them in there with guys who, some of them are veterans, some of them are past their sell-by date. They're good names to have, like, in terms of, champions of old, stuff like that. But I took issue with the fact that Eddie Hearn's selling them as though they're still viable opponents. Now, like, Conor Benn's beating someone that, Boots Ennis would be, would have a job beating, and then, kind of like that. I don't like that when you're trying to, sell, mutton dressed as lamb, basically. So moving on from that, they got a big announcement this week that Katie Taylor will defend her undisputed titles against Amanda Serrano 30th of April, MSG. That is going to go head to head with the Shakur Stevens Oscar Valdez unification fight. If I don't know, will I stay up for either, but if I do and I had to pick one, I'm just going to say it right here and there, I'm watching Valdez versus Shakur straight away. Like, don't get me wrong, I think Amanda Serrano will beat Katie Taylor. The build up to that fight's going to be good. But Shakur, man, he is something else. And I think he's going to... And look, it's not that I want to see Oscar Valdez get beat, but I just think we're going to see the best of Shakur Stevens in this fight. And I think Shakur is one of them fighters where, when he turned pro first... One thing about Shakur, when he turned pro first, he still looked very... I think he was 21 years old, but he still was like a boy in terms of his strength and in terms of how he was in the ring. He hadn't fully developed... You can see that he hadn't fully developed his man strength. Now he is. You can see that now with Shakur, that he's finally starting to fill out. He's developing his man strength now. And now we're seeing a good fighter. Not to say we're seeing a good fighter. He was always a good fighter, but now we're seeing him really develop into a very good fighter. So Shakur for me, definitely. It just gets from bad to worse. I mean, this guy is digging a deeper tunnel for himself, and I like this fighter at one stage so much. Mairis Briedis has now made a song about why are you doing this? He's not gonna fight. You're not gonna fight Jake Paul. You're unified cruiserweight champion. Your only loss has come to Alexander Usyk, arguably the greatest cruiserweight of all time. Why are you calling out a YouTuber? Why? Like, it just... why aren't you calling out Lawrence Akoli? Or that French guy whose name is extremely difficult to pronounce. Why aren't you calling him out? Like, do you want to be undisputed champion? But you not like Lawrence... Like, I was going to say Lawrence Akoli. Jake Paul is a businessman at the end of the day. Like, he is going to take fights with Tyrone Woodley, Tommy Fury. He's not going to say, right, I'm going to go in there at Mairis Briedis, the best cruiserweight on the planet. I'm going to try and win. He's not going to do that. Like, so I don't know why he's... I don't know. I don't know. It's just madness. When I see stuff like that, I just am like, what is going on in your head, mate? What is going on in your head? Frank Warren, well, actually, according to Dan Raphael as well, but Frank Warren, as we obviously know, won the purse bid for Tyson Fury, Dillian Whyte. There was talk of Tyson Fury being out on the 26th of March. I thought to myself, that's a very ambitious date. You know, what with, time wise, they're only announcing that not so long ago. But the date we're seeing here, which has been reported, and I think we may very well get clarification this week. In fact, let me see. I'm pretty sure it's going to officially be announced this week, according to Unibet Lowdown. Frank Warren has revealed Cardiff Principality Stadium, April the 23rd. Mark that date down in your calendar. That's going to be interesting. Let's talk a little bit about this fight. While we're here, we'll talk a little bit about it. I can see this fight being a very fun fight. I can see this fight having drama. I can see both guys touching down in this fight. I really can. Tyson Fury... I don't think Tyson Fury can move like he used to for 12 rounds. I don't think he can. I think that the inactivity, the way he lived his life, and the fluctuations in weight, I think that's taken a bit away from his mobility. Having said that, I think someone like Dillian Whyte, who's not got the quickest feet, I think someone like Dillian Whyte, Tyson Fury may be okay. The issue I take is for Fury is if he decides, I'm going to exchange with Dillian Whyte, because Dillian Whyte is good in the pocket. Dillian Whyte has a very powerful left hook. And Dillian Whyte is accurate with that. And I think that Tyson Fury there could be a situation where Fury hurts Whyte. Fury decides to get in the pocket, stays in the pocket, because Fury can be a bit clunky when he gets in the pocket sometimes, and I could see him getting caught with the left hook. Fury has very good recovery skills. I like this fight. I think it's going to be fun. The worrying thing I have is, for Fury's reason, is that he has been a bit dismissive of Dillian Whyte. And normally when he's not really taking an opponent serious, he doesn't tend to come in aesthetically the best of shape, and he normally tends to take his eye off the prize, a bit like the Otto Valine fight. And that's normally when we have the most entertaining fights with Fury. When he really is zoned in, like he was in the rematch for Deontay Wilder, he normally tends to be on a different level to his opponent. So we'll watch if that fight happens, we'll watch the space. It's going to be a good fight. I'm still going with Fury, definitely. Demetrius Andrade is now announced to be moving up to 168 pounds. WBO have now ordered Demetrius Andrade versus Zach Parker for the interim WBO super middleweight title. Parties have 10 days to agree a purse bids. Winner will likely be mandatory challenger for Canelo. Well, Demetrius Andrade wants a Canelo fight, so he's moving up. He's going to try and win an interim title off, against Zach Parker. The levels between Zach Parker and Demetrius Andrade are vast. Yeah, Zach Parker's had some good wins, against Marcus Morrison. The Darrell Williams fight, he lost that fight, but he got the decision. That was a couple of years ago now, to be fair. And he's had that other guy, what was the guy's name? Something Deet or something like that. Rowan Murdoch, that was the guy's name. Now, in reality, that guy was British level. And Parker, I think, stopped him late. I think he stopped him late anyway. Parker is probably a bit fringe world level / European. I would imagine Demetrius Andre with his skill set should be able to dispatch of Zach Parker. I would imagine anyway. Teofimo Lopez actually has been discussing the possible ring return against Arnold Barboza. That's going to be at his debut at super lightweight. So Teofimo Lopez looks set to move up into weight. I think he needed to, based upon the way he was saying he was, because he's been saying for a while now, even before he lost to Campos, even before he fought Lomachenko, that he's been struggling at 135. It's not a secret. It's not something that only came out as an excuse for his loss. It's known that he's big at the weight. So 140. I mean, like the stories I've heard about fighters moving up in weight, and it's not being any easier for them. Like I remember hearing a story about Munguia when he moved up to 160, and this was when he fought in Texas a couple of years ago, when he just his first fight at 160, and that he was still knocking back water and juice the next day, like loads of it. And it was like, it didn't really do much going to the 160. You'd think 4 pounds would be a big difference, but some of these guys are cutting so much weight. Would it even? Obviously it would, but like it's still a lot. So we'll see how T.O. looks. We'll finish off with these last two, because I've been talking for a while now. I only finished recording my prediction for Eubank Jr. versus Liam Williams. I'll probably premiere that tomorrow. Well, today, technically. Tomorrow when this video goes up, because it's Sunday now, obviously. And I'll probably premiere that Monday evening, the prediction. But I said in the video that the undercard wasn't strong. Now, this isn't a great fight. It's not a great fight, but Otto Wallin is set to return on the undercard against Kamil Sakalovsky of all people. What's the was Otto Wallin? Is he? No, I don't think he is. Anyway, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure he's not promoted by Boxer and Ben Shalom, unless maybe he signed a deal with them unbeknownst to us. I thought he was managed by Salita or promoted by Salita, or was it Ludabella? I'm not 100% sure. Oh no, maybe it was. Look, I'm not 100% sure who promotes out of Wallin, but he's on this card anyway. Always good to see a heavyweight. And Kamil Sakalovsky he's a good journeyman, very good journey, very durable, very hard man. I wonder how many rounds this will be. I'd imagine probably about 8 rounds, probably 8 or 10. But Sakalovsky is one of them really tough, durable journeymen who comes to win every time. Joseph Parker has said that his team have reached out to Andy Ruiz to try and make a rematch between them. 2016 was when they fought, and that was a very close competitive fight. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? So he's already had one rematch with Derek Chisora. Now he wants to finish this off with Andy Ruiz, stamp his authority on it. Well, Parker looked extremely good in his last fight. You know, there's still a few improvements that need to be made there, but definitely he's on the right track with Andy Lee. Whereas Andy Ruiz didn't, to say the least. Now, I would imagine that likelihood is that they're looking to probably match him with Charles Martin next. I'll be surprised if that fight happens. I wouldn't turn my nose up to it if it did. I'd just be alright. Probably be better than the first fight. But I would imagine that the likelihood is that he'll be facing Charles Martin next, as opposed to Joseph Parker. Actually, before I go, the IBF, right? The rankings, because over there going down the rankings to try and get Philip Hurley, which is final eliminator. Obviously with Tony Yoka can't happen. Something to do with the Bacoli fight. The fact that it was already signed for, he has to go through with that. Not Yoka's fault. Think it's not him just saying I don't want to fight Turgovich. It's the contract and all that, you know what, for Bacoli. Moving down the rankings, Gassiev, who I said might be a good shout. He's injured. And I think the only one left is Zhilei Zhang at this stage. So, I mean, like, I don't see why they haven't just made a mandatory at this. They've had to do this twice now. It's getting a bit ridiculous. They should really just make it mandatory. But if we get the Zhilei Zhang fight, I will watch it. But I can't imagine Zhilei Zhang is going to give much offense. The big bang is going to get absolutely banged. That's simple as what's going to happen there. So that is pretty much. It's been a good few things to talk about this week. I've been going for a while now, so I don't want to keep this too long. I hope if it's under a half hour or over a half hour, in around that, but in around the half hour mark. So I don't think I've gone that far on. Although it is 20 past 11 now, and I started this a lot earlier than that. So we'll wait and see. For now, lads and lasses, I hope you enjoy it as always. Hope you get your fix of last week's boxing in this video. And for now, I'll talk to you. Oh yeah, if you could smash the like button, help the boy out. Peace.